In order to use NextSwath, the following requirements must be met. You have a GNSS correction that is range point or higher. You have a guidance control system that is either autopilot, autopilot CAN, or autopilot motor drive. Your system has installed an appropriate NextSwath license. Your vehicle platform has a VDB file that supports NextSwath. OnSwath advanced line acquisition is enabled in the autopilot setup, and all implement and vehicle measurements are populated. Setting up NextSwath is done via the implement configuration. This can be done either during the process of creating a new implement or editing an existing implement. If the previous criteria has been met, you will see a NextSwath tab across the top of the screen. Select this tab and enable NextSwath. Once communication has been established with the navigation controller, you can see a summary of all the settings. Tap Edit to change any of these settings. Here is where we can customize our type of turn as well as any visual prompts we want the operator to follow at the start or the end of the turn. Turn pattern has 3 settings that will define the type of turn the vehicle will make. In type of turn, you have the option of shortest, which is a sharp turn. This turn will enable the vehicle to turn sharp 90 degrees and head towards the next swath and turn a hard 90 degrees into the new swath, creating the shortest possible path. Smoothest or round turn will enable the vehicle to create a turn that is a smooth 180 degree radius, exiting one swath and entering into the new swath. In turn pattern, you have 3 options: keyhole, turn wide at end, and turn wide at beginning. Keyhole refers to an equal adjustment on both exit and entry of the new swath, creating an achievable turn. Turn wide at end is going to make the turn so that the vehicle turns into the swath later, allowing the implement to come closer to the guidance line before straightening up. Turn wide at start is referring to the vehicle turning out of the guidance line away from the next line, ensuring there is enough room to make the turn. Swath change limit is referring to the maximum number of swaths that a user can set on the run screen to skip. For example, if this value was set to 2, the operator cannot set the number of swaths to skip any more than 2 from the user's run screen. The next configurable section is turn location. These settings are referring to the trigger point in which the vehicle initiates the turn. Shorten or extend swath setting is used when the operator is using headland guidance pattern and the inner boundary used to trigger the turn. Selecting Maximize Infill coverage means that the system will look at the application point of the implement and begin its turn when it crosses the inner boundary. However, if the other setting, Turn Within Boundary, is enabled, the system will also look at the outer boundary of the field and commence the turn earlier if it predicts the vehicle or implement is going to cross outside that boundary. Setting to minimize headland usage will potentially start the turn inside the infill area to allow for a full turn to be completed while minimizing the use in the headland area. This setting also looks at the vehicle rather than the implement making for the shortest distance through the turn. The next configurable option is Turn Within Boundary. This is where you are telling the system whether or not you want to acknowledge the outer boundary of the field to avoid crossing it. Setting to Disable disregards any field boundaries when calculating a turn. Setting to Enable Vehicle Only would use the vehicle's width in calculating the clearance to the boundary for the turn, disregarding any application or implement widths. Setting to Enable Vehicle and Implement uses the widest setting either from the vehicle measurements or the overall width of the implement itself. When either enabled with vehicle or vehicle and implement, you also have the option of setting a boundary clearance. Think of this setting as a buffer zone between the field boundary and the system's calculation of width. Theoretically, if you have mapped your field boundaries about 50 centimeters away from the physical fence line itself, you already have a 50 centimeter buffer built in, with this setting left at 0. The last setting in this page is True Swath Extension. This is a setting used when the True Swath option is used within NextSwath. It is used to delay the trigger point of the turn to allow for proper coverage when entering and exiting the row. Adjust this value as required if using the True Swath option. Next setting you adjust are your turn parameters. Turn speed is likely to have the biggest effect on your turn radius calculated to make the turn. The higher the turn speed, the larger the radius of the projected turn will be. If the vehicle enters a turn half a kilometre over this turn speed setting, your system will disengage and ask for operator input to take control. Minimum turn radius should be calculated for the articulation of the implement to ensure that no damage is done during a turn. Remote Engage Confirm Auto Turn allows the operator to use the Remote Engage switch to acknowledge the end of row turn acceptance message. From here, all your settings are configured to use NextSwath. Continue to work through the remainder of the implement configuration, making sure to use the tick marks to save all your settings. When in the run screen, you must first enable NextSwath and accept the liability warning before it can be used. Do this, use the NextSwath tray and press the Enable NextSwath button. In the NextSwath tray, you also need to specify how many swaths you would like the vehicle to turn. By default, this is set to 0 when the field is first opened. Setting to 1 means the vehicle will turn onto the next swath either left or right from the current swath. Setting to 2 will mean the vehicle is going to turn onto the second swath from the current swath, which will cause the system to skip one swath. Each subsequent turn will automatically change direction in order for the vehicle to work its way across the field. Enabling True Swath will calculate the turn based on the implement rather than the vehicle when lining up for the next swath. You also have the ability to turn on or off the turn actions from this screen. Turn actions will be covered later in this tutorial. If you need to make adjustments to the automatic turn settings, you can do this via the diagnostic screen during the operation. Navigate to Diagnostics, Autopilot Configuration, and select the Next Swath tab at the top of the screen. From here, you have the ability to fine-tune or adjust any settings related to the tuning and turning of the vehicle. It is also important to note that the on-swath line acquisition settings can also affect the vehicle's turn characteristics. Most notable will be the slew rate and the steering angle, as these play an important role on how the vehicle calculates its turn. When using Next Swath in the field, the operator must acknowledge the end of row turn or the vehicle will disengage and ask for operator input. If the vehicle is travelling faster than the maximum turn speed, the vehicle will also disengage auto steer. You can initiate a manual turn at any time by pressing the manual button. This will put the system in a standby mode, looking for an operator input to initiate the turn. To initiate the turn, simply press the button at the top of the screen. This option will not be accessible if the vehicle is travelling above the maximum turn speed. You can change when the confirmation message for the turn appears on the screen. To do this, navigate to the Precision IQ settings and select Steering and Guidance. Distance is used to trigger the audio alarm to alert the operator of when the end of row is approaching. This is also used to determine when the message is displayed on the screen for the operator to confirm the next turn. Increasing this distance will allow the message to appear earlier, giving the operator more time to accept it. Lowering this distance will cause the message to appear later and less time for the operator to accept the turn. Turn actions are configurable items that can be visual and audio reminders for an operator to perform a sequence of events before and after a turn. Configurable actions consist of adjusting the operation speed for the turn, raising and lowering an implement, or turning the coverage application on or off. These can be adjusted to be triggered off several different reference points of either the vehicle or the application point or the implement ground contact point. If your vehicle is equipped with a headland management system, you can also have the ability to perform a sequence A or sequence B. This is used in conjunction with the Next Swath Connect feature. Next Swath Connect is a licensed feature that will allow integration of the display to trigger a vehicle's headland management system. This can be done either via CAN messaging or the NAV3 controller. If using a NAV3 controller, you also only have the ability to use one trigger. This feature is not possible if using a NAV2 controller. Refer to the Autopilot supported platforms list to determine whether the vehicle you are fitting has a supported NextSwath Connect interface. For further detail on NextSwath technology, refer to the operator's manual or view the bulletin on the CNH Partners website.